has recently spoken about the border. Too little, too late. This is the biggest unforced error of this administration, in my view. All of this crisis goes right back to when the president was first sworn in. The policies he pursued created the crisis at the border, and it will not be solved by any executive step that he takes this late.
You can tell the season we're in. We're in the political season based upon what the Democrats and the Senate are and are not spending their time and energy considering. Clearly, the goal of Senate Democrats and Senator Schumer is to have a summer of show votes. We had one of those already on the border. We're having one this week on contraception. I'm sure there will be more votes like that to come, none of which, I might add, have an objective of actually getting a result, getting an outcome, or getting something signed into law. They are purely and simply designed to give vulnerable Democrats political cover on issues that they know that they are vulnerable on. You can also see what they're not spending their time on, what we're not spending our time on here in the Senate. We're not spending our time on increasing energy production or making the permitting process easier or streamlining it. We are not spending our time, obviously, on reducing spending to combat and attack inflation. And those are the types of things that we ought to be probably arguably talking about. Energy, the border, inflation, national security, issues like that. That's not what the Democrats are interested in talking about simply because it doesn't suit their political purposes. So we are in this period right now. It's political season. We know that, nothing more, nothing less, and I expect we're going to have a lot more show votes this summer. We believe that the Democrats ought to be talking about the issues that are important to the American people, and those are the cost of living. The Democrats are the party of higher prices. Joe Biden is the president of higher prices. We ought to be talking about energy. We ought to be talking about what we're going to do to secure the border and what we're going to do to keep this country safe. Those are the things the American people care about. They are not on the Democrats' agenda.
Well, the prosecution of President Trump was 100% political. It wasn't about justice. It was about weaponizing the Justice Department to go after and attack a political opponent. And the American people see through this completely. They know that this was all politically motivated, and they unfortunately are now seeing a two-tiered system of justice in the United States. The Democrat-controlled Justice Department is desperately trying to throw a lifeline to President Biden, who is failing and flailing. And the Democrat machine is orchestrating all of these attacks. And you may say, why is that? Well, it's pretty clear. They're trying to distract the American public and the American voters from the pain that they're suffering each and every day across the country. And it's the pain of high prices. It's the pain of the concern that the country is heading in the wrong direction. And it's the pain of 10 million illegal immigrants who have come across, flooding across our border, and the real risk of danger and damage to our country as a result of that. The Democrats don't want people to remember the low prices of the previous administration, or the secure border, or the strong economy. Republicans are united in getting the country headed in the right direction. The Democrats are afraid of our agenda. And what's that agenda? Well, it's lower costs, lower prices. It's a secure border, and it's unleashing American energy. That's what the American people want and need for the next 4 years.
Well, we've seen about 3.5 years of absolute chaos in this administration, both at home and abroad. It has been one crisis after the next. And so what we've seen the Democrats do, they've resorted to weaponizing the justice system against President Trump. And as I was out and about doing my river-to-river tour this last week, I found out, you know what? Iowans are really tired of this. They are tired of not just the prosecution of Trump, but the persecution of President Trump. And so what is our takeaway? Our takeaway is that Democrats have nothing to run on this fall. So what are they doing? They've started the fear-mongering process. So they will bring up a bunch of these show votes, and we are going to see that this week. And what they are saying out there is that, you know, oh, those Republicans, they're going to try and take away your access to contraception. Well, that can't be farther from the truth, folks. And I have a bill that is proof of that. We've got many, many Republican sponsors on it. And instead of allowing abortion on demand, what my bill will do is actually provide greater access to over-the-counter contraception. And instead of giving access to dangerous drugs without doctor supervision, what my bill will do is provide greater access to safe, over-the-counter contraception options that many young women will be able to easily access. We have a lot of lies coming from the left, folks. I want you to be aware of that. We're going to see it in upcoming weeks over and over and over again. But Republicans do support safe access to contraception.
Well, we saw just a short time ago today that President Biden has just finally tried to at least put a face on that he is trying to meet the challenges at the border. And, you know, instead of talking about what we're doing here in the Senate, we should have been talking about seriously addressing this issue, and the president should have been doing what he's doing today several years ago to stop the flow. So I just got back over this past week. We went with the congressional members over to do a national security congressional trip. Our first stop was Finland. Finland has an 800-mile border with Russia. And guess what they did? They've shut down their border in Finland because Russia was sending plants and scurrilous individuals across the border into Finland to get into Finland, then and into Europe, and then into wherever they want to stir up trouble. And Finland finally decided they'd had enough. So we went out to see the wall they built. It's a metal wall. It's about 15 feet high. It's got wire on the top. It's got all kinds of security cameras. It's got a road right by it. They cut the trees down and everything to secure their border. They shut down the entry points, and guess what? Nobody's entering Finland on that border. Nobody. So you can have policies if you have the will and you believe in the danger that unchecked immigration or immigration into your country can really, what the challenge of that is and the security of that. So I think President Biden maybe ought to take a trip over to Finland and see exactly how they're doing it and how effective it is and how it could be used here in the United States to move forward with our legal immigration and make sure that the flow stops. I would like to point out one thing that happened shortly before we left. We have a great advocacy group in the state of West Virginia, as I'm sure every state does, by people and families who are afflicted with Parkinson's disease. It can be a very debilitating, sad, and very tough disease that doesn't have a lot of answers in a lot of ways. And so we joined together bipartisan in this past, right before we left, a plan to end Parkinson's disease. And I want to thank my West Virginia advocates. I went to their boxing classes. I've talked with them in the grocery store. Everybody, you know, there's a spectrum of affliction that comes with Parkinson's disease. I want to thank Michael J. Fox and the Michael J. Fox Foundation for their advocacy. And we are very hopeful that this can be a great first step to ending a really devastating disease that affects so many Americans, and that being Parkinson. Thank you.
So, some of you might remember Evel Knievel. Evel Knievel was a daredevil. He was a stunt artist. He was from Butte, Montana. And he attempted some pretty crazy stuff. Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and their Dem allies are giving old Evel Knievel a run for his money when it comes to pushing the envelope on crazy. Let me give you just a few of the recent latest and greatest hits. The Trump trial. let's be clear. President Trump would have gotten a fair trial in Honduras. The Dems have weaponized the justice system. They held a trial worthy of a banana republic with a judge who donated to Joe Biden's campaign. It was a total and complete sham. And then just before we left for the Memorial Day recess, Chuck Schumer put a border bill on the floor. It was all for show because the Senate Democrats' border crisis has now become a significant political crisis. And Biden knows it too, which is why 3 years after he rolled back all of President Trump's policies and helped secure the border, he finally decided to do something today. But it's a little too late. The American people see through it. They know better. They know the border is Joe Biden and the Senate Democrats' fault. They know record inflation is President Biden and Senate Democrats' fault. And they know President Biden and Senate Democrats' foreign policy is a disaster, which has incited chaos around the world. They know a stunt when they see it, which is why they are going to hold President Biden and Senate Democrats accountable 5 months from today for all their failures.
Well, in what has become a weekly tradition, Manu?
Now that you have not weighed in about your support for Donald Trump in the aftermath of this conviction, now that he is a convicted felon, are you 100% behind him?
What I said last week, I will say again, this is a case that never should have been brought in the first place, and I think will be overturned on appeal.
Are you supporting him? Are you supporting him?
Leader McConnell, as you probably know, some of your Republican colleagues are circulating a letter asking for signatures, basically pledging not to confirm any Biden political appointees or judicial nominees, or to work with Democrats on anything not related to national security. What's your reaction to that?
The solution is to have a Republican majority, and then we'd be in a position to determine what the agenda was going to be. There are opportunities when you're in a minority, but not to set the agenda.
Leader McConnell.
Burgess?
Yeah, the RNC co-chair criticized Larry Hogan's response to the Trump verdict last week. Did you think that was appropriate for her to do?
Well, what I think is we need more Republican members of the Senate, and whether you're Mike Lee or whether you're Susan Collins, we need more Republicans in order to set the agenda. So obviously I support all the Republican candidates, and certainly Governor Hogan would be among them.
Leader McConnell.